There is a fantasy we all share, quitting the 9 to 5, telling the boss goodbye, and making a fortune selling things on the internet from our bedroom. But does the reality of taping cardboard boxes actually feel like freedom, or is it just another job? I spent 10 hours in e-commerce simulation to find out if this is the ultimate side hustle fantasy, or a minimum wage nightmare. If you've browsed Steam lately, you know we are living in the golden age of the job simulator. You can be a power washer, a gas station attendant, a supermarket manager, or a TCG shop owner. Why do we play these? Why do we come home from 8 hours of work only to sit down at a computer and work more? The answer is control. In real life, work is messy, office politics, ungrateful bosses, subway delays, but in a good simulator, work is pure input and output. You can clean the dirt goes away, you stock the shelf, the product sells. It is cozy because it is predictable. That brings us to today's subject, e-commerce simulation. On paper, this game has the perfect recipe for a cozy hit. You start with nothing, you buy products online, you pack them in your bedroom, you ship them out, you get rich. It promises the zero to hero dopamine loop that we crave, but there is a dark side to this genre, the asset flip side. The side where simulation is just a buzzword for tedium. I went into this game wanting to love it, I wanted to build an Amazon empire from my garage, but after dozens of hours, my diagnosis is grim. This isn't just a game that lacks polish, it is a game that fundamentally misunderstands what makes work fun. And today we're going to dissect exactly why. Let's start with the atmosphere. When we look for a cozy game, we usually want one of two things. A world that feels alive and spirited, or a world that feels grounded and relaxing. E-commerce simulation exists in a third category, Sterile. The game drops you into an open world city, and open world is a very generous term here. It is a collection of grey blocks and flat textures that feel less like a living city and more like an architectural model that someone forgot to paint. You start in a small apartment, and this is standard for the genre, the rags to riches trope. But usually that gritty starting location has character. Think of the messy garage in Power Wash Simulator or the charmingly rundown farm in Stardew Valley. Here the grit just feels glitchy. The lighting is flat, the textures are low resolution. When you walk, your camera bobs in a way that feels disconnected from your body. It triggers a specific alarm in the back of your brain. It feels like a template that was bought on an asset store and stitched together without much thought. And this matters. Immersion in a simulator isn't about photorealism, it's about cohesion. If I am supposed to believe I am a struggling entrepreneur, the world needs to follow its own rules. But when I place a box on the table and it vibrates aggressively before clipping through the wood and falling on the floor, the fantasy breaks. I am no longer a business owner, I am a playtester fighting a physics engine. Now let's talk about the mechanics, or the loop. A good gameplay loop is a spiral. It starts small, and as you get better it widens, you get tools that let you do more, faster. E-commerce simulation is not a spiral, it is a straight line, and it is a line covered in molasses. The core sin of this game is the one item rule. In the early game, you can only buy one item at a time. Let's say you want to sell chargers. You go to your computer, you click buy charger, you wait. You cannot buy 10 chargers, you cannot buy a crate of chargers, you buy one. Then you need a box. And you cannot buy a stack of 50 flat pack boxes to keep an inventory, you buy one box. This is a baffling design choice. It turns inventory management, which is usually the fun part of a tycoon game, into a chore. You aren't strategizing, you aren't looking at your stock levels and thinking, I need to restock my supply chain, you're just clicking. Buy charger, buy box, wait. Buy charger, buy box, wait. It creates a bottleneck that feels artificial. It doesn't feel like you are limited by your money, it feels like you are limited by the developer's code. Eventually your supplies arrive, and now we get onto the hands-on part, the packing. In Supermarket Simulator, stocking a shelf has a snap. You click, the box goes thwack, the item appears, it's snappy and it respects your time. In e-commerce simulation, the game wants to be a physics sandbox. You have to physically pick up the item, put it in the box, drag the tape gun across the seam. I asked myself during this process, is this satisfying? And the answer was no, it's clunky. There's no tactile joy here, the hitboxes are imprecise, sometimes you try to close the box and the lid phases through the product. It reminds me of Surgeon Simulator, where the controls are intentionally bad for comedy, but this game isn't trying to be funny, it's trying to be a serious business sim. When the controls fight you, you don't feel cozy, you feel frustrated, you aren't in the zone, you're just annoyed. If the packing mechanic is the job, the driving mechanic is the commute, and just like in real life, the commute is the worst part of the day. The developer decided to make this an open world city where you have to drive your inventory to the post office. Driving in games is hard to get right. Rockstar spends hundreds of millions of dollars to make driving in GTA feel good. When a solo indie dev tries to add driving to a tycoon game, it almost always ends in disaster. And unfortunately, this is what happened here. The vehicle physics are floaty, the car has no weight, and it steers like a shopping cart with a broken wheel. But the bigger issue isn't the physics, it's the game design. Why do we have to drive? Does it add strategy? Does it add challenge? Does it add fun? In this case, no. It is simply a time tax. It exists to pad out the gameplay loop. Because you can only carry a few boxes at a time in the early game, and because you are buying items one by one, the ratio of working to driving is about 50-50. Imagine if in Tetris, every time you cleared a line, you had to stop playing and walk your character to a recycling center to dump the blocks. That is what this feels like. It interrupts the flow state. And remember, this is an e-commerce simulator. The whole point of e-commerce is that you don't have to go to the store. The irony here is kind of palpable. We need to have a serious conversation about survival mechanics in cozy games. Somewhere along the line, game developers decided that realism means annoyance. In e-commerce simulation, you have a hunger bar, a thirst bar, and an energy sleep bar. These meters add nothing to the experience. I'm in the middle of a rush, I have 3 orders to ship, I'm calculating my profit margins, I am finally getting into a rhythm despite the bad physics. And then beep, my character is hungry. I cannot ignore it or I will pass out or walk incredibly slowly, so I have to drop the box, leave the apartment, get in the floaty car and drive to the supermarket. I have to buy some chocolate and I have to watch an eating animation. This isn't gameplay, this is a chore. In a game like The Sims, managing needs is the puzzle. Balancing your bladder versus your social life is the game. Here the game is about business. The hunger bar is just an obstacle preventing you from playing the game you bought. It feels like the developer didn't have enough content to fill the hours, so they added maintenance to stretch it out. But JT, you say, maybe the simulation is deep, maybe the business side is complex. I checked the economy thoroughly and the results are in, it's a puddle. There is no real challenge here. The strategy is buy an item for $10, check the market price, it's $20, list it for $19, profit. That's it. That is the entire economic model. There are no fluctuating seasons, no supply chain disruptions, no customer trends, and no brand loyalty mechanics. The user interface reflects this shallowness. It is blocky, sometimes difficult to navigate, and hides information. You have to click through 3 different screens just to see how much money you made on a sale. In a game like Capitalism Lab or even 2 Point Hospital, the game evolves. As you get bigger, the problems get harder, you have to manage staff, manage heat, manage layout efficiency. In e-commerce simulation, the game at hour 1 feels identical to the game at hour 20, you just have a slightly bigger room. The only reward is the notification sound. And I'll give credit where it's due, the sound effect is doing a lot of heavy lifting. It triggers a dopamine response, but a cash register sound effect is not a game loop, it's a slot machine. We cannot review this game in a vacuum, we have to look at the competition, specifically Supermarket Simulator. Now, Supermarket Simulator is not a perfect game, it has its own jank, but it understands the assignment. In that game, stocking a shelf is fast, scanning items is fast, the lighting is warm, the customers line up visually, and you feel the pressure of the rush hour. In e-commerce simulation, there is no rush hour, there is just you alone in a room wrestling a cardboard box. Or look at Power Wash Simulator. The game is purely about the zen of cleaning, it removes all friction, you don't have a hunger bar, you don't have to drive to the job site, you just click start job and you wash. E-commerce sim tries to do everything, driving, survival, decorating, physics, and because it tries to do everything, it does nothing well. It is a classic case of feature creep drowning out the fun. Now, I tried to keep these reviews grounded in reality, but at heart I'm an optimist. I want to find the good in everything. So is there anyone who should play this? Actually, yes. There is a specific type of gamer that I call the podcast gamer. You know who you are, you have a second monitor, you're watching a 4-hour video essay about the history of lasagna. You don't want a game that requires brain power, and you don't want Elden Ring, you want something to keep your hands busy. For that specific purpose, e-commerce simulation functions. Once you upgrade your skills a bit and once you numb yourself to the physics, there is a hypnotic quality to the boredom. And the customization is decent. You can buy plants, paint the walls, and upgrade from that dirty mattress to a nice bed. There is a tiny spark of satisfaction in looking at your warehouse, seeing the shelves stacked high with boxes that you packed, and knowing that you built this. I also want to acknowledge the developer. This is clearly a passion project. Building an open world, a physics system, and an economy system as a solo dev is a monumental task. The ambition is there, but ambition is not the same as execution. My mission is to be a trusted guide for your free time. I cannot, in good conscience, tell you to buy this game in its current state. Is e-commerce simulation a hidden gem? No. And is it a diamond in the rough? No. For me, it is a hard pass. The combination of game-breaking glitches, tedious progression, pointless survival mechanics, and empty open world design make this a frustration engine, not a relaxation tool. There are simply better games out there. If you want to run a shop, play Supermarket Simulator, and if you want to drive, play Euro Truck. If you want to organise boxes, play Wilmot's Warehouse. However, I want to end with a lesson for any aspiring indie devs watching this channel. Less is more. This game fails because it is too big. If the developer had cut the city, cut the car, cut the hunger bar, and focused 100% of their effort on making the packing feel amazing, this could have been a top tier game. We don't need a fake city, we need a satisfying click. I'm curious to hear from you. What is your limit for jank in a simulator game? Can you forgive bad physics if the economy is good, or does one glitchy box ruin the whole vibe? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you want a recommendation for a cozy game that respects your time, check out my review of Cozy Caravan popping up on screen right now. It has 0 combat, 0 hunger bars, and 100% vibes. I'm JT, this has been JaeTeeGames, and I'll see you in the next one.